right, everybody. I will call this meeting to order for January the 15th, 2018. Can I have an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried? And before we start, I just want to acknowledge that we are meeting on the shared traditional lands of the Coast Salish people. And with that, we will go to the adoption of the minutes. Special Committee of the Whole, December the 11th.
Adoption.
We have a mover. We don't need a seconder. Committee, any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Next item of business is public participation. This is mostly budget related and grants and aids. So just to let folks know that after presentations, if the public has questions at that time, you're more than willing to stand up and ask. Okay, so we will move on under new business grant. Oh, sorry. I didn't see you get up, Chris. Stand up and speak.
Good evening, Honorable Chairman. I'm Chris Wright. I reside on Marianne Crescent. On page 14, I believe city staff have provided a recommendation to the committee, and I would like to voice my support for that and encourage members of this committee to adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before we turn it over to our Director of Finance? Oh, see none. First item of business is a presentation from our Director of Finance regarding the 2018 Grant and Aid Summary. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening to members of the community and of our nonprofit community and council. So today we're here, we're moving along in the budget process. Our first step is to stop and consider grant and aids for the next year. And so I'm here to provide a context of how grant and aids have been approved in previous years. And I will let council make their recommendations with those in mind. So this year we received 17 applications. Total funding requests are $59,300. In addition to that, last year the committee and as adopted by council moved 6 of those applications, 6 grant and aid applications into line items in the operating budget. So in addition to that $59,300 in funding requests, there's $13,800 set aside for those organizations. Total funding in 2017, so that's including those organizations that have been moved into line items, in 2017 were $41,850. And so if the $13,800 for those organizations that are set aside, that forms a baseline for this year's budget consideration of $28,050. So as I mentioned, this year applications funding requests total $59,300. So that's approximately $30,000 above last year's budget. Such a request would have approximately a quarter of a percent tax impact on Colwood residents. Last thing I'll mention, and I'll ask the chair to invite attendees to provide a presentation, is I would mention that this year we're looking at the budget through a lens of service level. So continuing in that fashion, I would just note that I think it's important for council and the community to consider the nature of the grant and aid requests and what they have on community expectations. So if council chooses to invest money in services and expanding those services, there becomes an implicit community expectation that those services continue. It always remains within council's discretion to adjust service levels as time goes on. But keep that lens in mind as you look, and that's in no way discouraging council to invest in the programs that they think are valuable to the community as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, I'll open it up to the public if you have any questions for the Director of Finance at this time. Seeing none, back to committee. The Director of Finance outlined a figure of about $28,000 as a bit of a reference point. If Council's okay with using that as a reference point at this time, what I was envisioning is after the presentations, we'll go through all the presentations, and then after that is complete, go to our list that we have with the amounts, see what is supported and what is not, and then staff is tallying that amount. We'll see where we end up after we've identified those that we wish to support, and then revisit and adjust accordingly. And Council or committee may want to increase that amount depending on how close or not we are. But if committee is okay with that type of structure, similar to what we did last year, moved pretty seamlessly. Okay, with that, I will just let those that making a presentation know that there is a 5-minute time limit for each presentation. So, like last year, I'll be using my stopwatch just to make sure we keep on time, because we are pretty loaded for tonight, so it's important to keep moving. With that, we will start with the Anawim Companion Society.
Good evening. My name is Terry Brown, and I'm the House Director of the Anawim Companion Society. What we are is we're a day house for people that are living in poverty that are trying to find a better way of life. So what we are is we're a home for the homeless to come to be a part of. What makes us different than other organizations is that whole concept of home. We look at people at who they are and what can we do to help them get off the streets and find the life that they need for themselves. We do this in a very holistic way, and we also do this regardless of the problems that they may have. We hear a lot about addiction, we hear a lot about mental illness, but there's so many other reasons why somebody is homeless. And that's what we do at Anawim, is we find out why are they homeless, and we get them the help that they need. We don't actually do the help, we use the other organizations in town to get them the help that they need. And then we follow up. Did that method actually work for them, or did it not work for them? And I do believe that this is where a lot of organizations fail, because what they do is they say, do this, next. Do this, next. It's a follow-up. It's a continuous thing. Why are they there? What can we do to help them? So one of the things that would be asked is, what is the benefit to Colwood? And honestly, this is actually not just a City of Victoria issue. It's not a Capital Regional District issue. It's a Canadian-wide issue. And we as a society need to help the poor. We need to help the homeless. We need to help them in a way to get them off the street. It's not just about the home. It's also about the mental stuff, the stuff inside. And that's where Anawim comes in the biggest. We do a lot of, our organization runs on no government funding. We do this by going out to the public and saying, this is who we are, this is what we do. You'll see in my application, you'll see our actual numbers. Instead of going through there, you can just see we get lots of people that come to us, and we use a lot of volunteers as we possibly can. We have volunteer counselors. We have volunteer people that come and do yoga. We have volunteer people that come and do mental health courses for our people. And really what it is, it's about the community coming together to work together. And I can't emphasize that more. We don't just help those, we let them help themselves. It's the people that come that make the meals. It's the people that come that look after the home. It's the people that come that make Anawim what it is. And we did ask for $1,500 from you. And with that $1,500, what that's going to do is it's going to help feed. It's going to actually put food into people's mouths. It's also going to be able to help pay for the utilities. We actually go through an astronomical amount of utilities in our house for showering and laundering. We are actually the only organization in town that both has a shower and a laundry for the homeless to use in one place. Believe that or not. With that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I hope you say yes to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Any questions while he's still here? Chris, I saw your hand shoot up. Was that a...
Yeah, I do have a question. In the attachments, I don't know if I'm looking at the most current version,
Yeah. Yeah, there's a hard copy in the back too, Chris, but yeah.
But I wonder why it's not on here.
To staff, it's the act, like what was uploaded into our systems here is the grant and aid program application, the Colwood one, but there is nothing, there's no fill-in for these folks.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. We do note the hard copy is filled out, but for whatever reason, that was a good observation. Come to committee. Jason.
Yes, you're asking $1,500 from Colwood. Which other communities are supporting you?
Right now, we do have a commitment from the City of Victoria at the moment, and we have put applications into Esquimalt and View Royal. Right now, we're waiting for the updates for the others. We will be hitting all of the CRD.
Thank you. Any other questions? Cynthia?
I'd just like to know, do you service homeless people? Do you service homeless youth as well?
No, we don't. We're a 19-plus facility.
Okay, thank you.
Great. I don't see any further questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Next up is a presentation from Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Victoria Capital Region. Thank you. That one's filled out.
And we do have a PowerPoint. I'll be talking my way through the PowerPoint, but letting people sort of peruse the information on there themselves as well. My name is Rhonda Brown, and I'm the Executive Director for Big Brothers Big Sisters. Thank you for having me here. And I want to talk a little bit about our work in the community of Colwood. We were very fortunate, and I thank you for the grant that we received last year. And through that grant, oh, I've got the button. Of course I do. Okay. And I'm pushing the red one? There we go. So throughout southern Vancouver Island, we served, it was actually 570 children and youth, matching them with a mentor. In total, in the community, we had over 600 families ask our agency for support. 31 of the children matched with a mentor, and those children, having been matched now for a year, live in Colwood. In addition, 9 youth from the Colwood area stepped up as volunteer mentors in our school-based programs. 44 Colwood residents volunteered with Big Brothers Big Sisters, so caring community members who step forward in support of children and youth or on our committees and board. We offered 2 programs. They were our community mentoring program and a teen mentoring program in Colwood. This year, what we would like to do is expand our services in the Colwood area. We've been working with middle schools of Dunsmuir and John Stubbs and the Children's Health Foundation, and have been working to a program called Go Girls, Healthy Bodies, Healthy Minds, which supports girls 11 to 14 years old who are identified at risk. And each school has embraced the program and is identifying 30 girls over the course of the school year who will benefit from the extra support offered through that program. The Reach Through Mentoring really touches on every arm of services in the sector, from children and family development, justice, the social development of children, health, Aboriginal relations, and education, and we're certainly seeing that reflected in our Go Girls program. We see a huge value in mentoring in terms of a return on investment for a community, so a preventative program that also offers some early intervention support through supported referral of the girls or children within our programs. And I should say that we're going to continue to offer our community mentoring program and teen mentoring program in the community, but we're stepping up and responding to a need identified by the middle schools in your community for this extra support for girls. So we invest in children through mentoring. We know that mentoring has an impact. Go Girls is a supported, it's a group that meets in the school. It's a self-help support group for girls. The facilitators are volunteer mentors from the community of Colwood. The girls work through a curriculum which addresses a number of issues. The curriculum changes slightly depending on what some of the common issues are that are impacting girls in the group. Some of it is violence. Some of it is living in a home that is struggling with poverty, mental illness, addictions. A lot of it is related to bullying, and a lot we're identifying is related also to self-harm. So this is what we see in terms of how mentors are helping in your community. We see decreases in risky behavior, violence, drug and alcohol use, and bullying among our youth, and increases in health and well-being, civic engagement, school completion, and enrollment in post-secondary education. And I will say about that one, some of the youth that we have mentored in Colwood have come along to become teen mentors and are mentoring children in elementary school. They remain with us when they move on to college and university, and they stay with us as adults. So we see people grow up with our organization and stay with the organization because they've received benefit from it and they recognize the impact it can have in the community.
Rhonda, just a minute left.
Okay. So the families are struggling with the issues that you see above or on our PowerPoint. And I would just like to say that, like I mentioned, Children's Health has stepped up in support of this program as well and is offering dollars to bring it into the school. Schools are working closely with us to identify the girls who really need it. And we're asking Colwood for $3,000 in support of the program. We do have secured funding over the next 3 years from Children's Health so that we can have a real impact in this area. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rhonda.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions from the public? Seeing none, committee. Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, Creatively United for the Planet Society. I know they're going to be... Oh, you made it on time. Perfect. Thank you. We would have waited.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you so much to Mayor, Council, staff, and the committee for meeting here tonight and giving us an opportunity to speak. Is there an opportunity to look at www.creativelyunited? Oh, thank you. You're way ahead of me. Okay. I love it. I'm looking at faces here. Okay, so thank you as well for the approval of a small grant that you gave us last year to put towards the community hub that we've created. I hope you've maybe had the opportunity to see the addition, especially on food and farming. We featured David Grove and his wife Gwen Schneider at the Royal Bay Bakery and gave them quite a bit of exposure. We showed the bakery, and we even showed their home garden, gave credit to Colwood for all the, forward thinking and allowing people to have the types of large food-bearing gardens that they have and to do what they've done. And it's been really inspirational. We've had a lot of really super great feedback about that program, and we actually have more footage that we'd like to have in future shows. We're working in partnership with Shaw. We're all volunteers. It's to do this type of work, we do require funding because we do pay a webmaster to try to keep this out there. We're paying for some social media assistance. We need more. We'd love more. And there's equipment costs. There's so many different things that we've already listed in the grant application, and we really hope that you'll give us the opportunity to come back to Colwood and do this. And we can't do it without the support of our different municipal partners, because if the municipalities aren't interested, then really why would we want to showcase what's happening in that municipality if they're not interested in working with us? We've presented Royal Bay in 2015. As you might recall, we had a giant Earth Day festival, which brought like a couple thousand people to this area. We helped put that high school in this area, that area on the map. insofar as presenting it in the best possible light and talked about all the wonderful forward things that Colwood is doing, and we want to keep doing that. And so we're asking for your support, and we invite any questions you might have.
Great. Thank you, Frances.
Thank you.
Open it up to the public first. Well, seeing none, committee. Rob.
Thank you. How many unique views are you guys getting on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis?
I can get back to you about that, but we do have like a Facebook following that's up to about 3,000. It's growing. We have a mailing list close to 10,000, and we've put out a lot. We've been like putting out newsletters telling people about the show. We've got, Shaw doesn't keep statistics. That's part of the problem.
Right.
And so trying to get those is really tough, but I'm finding it quite interesting because over the holidays, I was on the mainland for a little bit, and prior to the holidays, and I ran into some people who said, oh, we know you from that TV show. And we really enjoyed that. We love that. We need more of that type of programming. And Shaw really wants to see more of this type of programming too, but we need to bring in partners to do it.
Great. Thank you. Mayor Hamilton.
Frances, how many other of the communities, I didn't see it identified, that contribute to your overall?
Oh, okay. Well, we've had the CRD, but you may not, Esquimalt.
Yeah,
We've had some funding from the City of Victoria. My brain is just going a little blank at the moment. That's sorry. I think that's about it for now.
Been some uptake from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And we've got a number of community partners, and they're mostly through like sponsorships, through like organizations like Reliable Controls, who's in the View Royal area. They've kind of represented View Royal with their forward thinking and us showcasing their building and their green solutions as well. So,
Great.
yeah, we're still fairly new to the grant process, so it's not something that, like the grants at this point, we haven't applied for everything yet, and we just started applying for this last year.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I don't see any further questions from committee.
Okay,
So,
we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and invite everybody to have a look.
Next up is Crisis Intervention and Public Information Society of Greater Victoria, Need 2.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. My name's Jane Arnott, and I'm with Need 2. I just wanted to update Council briefly on the activities that Need 2 has been pursuing over the past year.
Jane, you may need to speak. Yeah.
Is that better? Yeah,
Perfect,
that
thank
sounds
you.
better. Okay. So we've been quite active in the West Shore schools over the past year. We go into classrooms and do presentations about that are suicide awareness and mental health awareness presentations. We spoke to 487 students in Royal Bay, Belmont, John Stubbs, and Dunsmuir over the past year. When we go into a school, we work with the school and try to present to every single class in a grade cohort. So we're usually talking to kids when they're in grade 8, sometimes 7, 8, and then grade 10 again. So most kids will get the presentation twice over the span of their school career, and it basically gives them information and engages them in conversation around recognizing warning signs for kids who are struggling or maybe thinking of suicide. It talks to them about ways to engage with those kids, ask the questions, see if they are in fact having a hard time, gives them tools to both seek help from adults if they're feeling like they can't handle it themselves, seek help from adults if they themselves are struggling. And we also give them tools around just some exercises around mindfulness that are geared towards basically giving them some ways to cope with stresses and anxieties that might arise. We also have one other service that isn't, we can't give numbers on in terms of where people are engaging with us from, because it's a web-based chat service that provides emotional and crisis support. And in the past year, we engaged with, in chats, for over 4,700 chats. That's more than double what we had last year. And the service itself has been going since 2007, but we're seeing that trend that started in about last April, and it's just steadily going up. About 25% of the chatters that come in are discussing suicide. About 30 are discussing things like anxiety, depression, and stress. And for both of those services, our youth-focused services, they are volunteer delivered. So right now the organization has over 115 volunteers involved in both youth space and in the suicide education presentations. Most of those volunteers are under 30. Most of them are affiliated with youth space, which is open every night, every night of the year from 6 to 12. And they receive about 40 hours of training and ongoing support. So they also contribute to the community and take those skills out into the world as they move on in their lives and careers. We are hoping next year to be expanding our capacity a bit in youth space, and we're looking at training additional volunteers. So we'll be probably training, there's attrition, and we usually train around 50. We'll probably be training 75 next year. So you have supported us in the past, and the municipal support that we get really does help us in pursuing other funding. So hopefully you will consider supporting us again, and if you have any questions, more than glad to answer them.
Thank you, Jane. I'll open it up to the public first. Chris.
I'll say minimally. Ministry for Children and Families contributes about $20,000. We also do get support from the province through a gaming grant.
Hey, Jane, could you just speak in the...
Sorry. Shall I repeat that?
Please.
Okay, yes. We get about $20,000 from the Ministry of Children and Families, and we also get support through the province through the gaming grant. But that's it at this point in time.
Thank you. Committee? No? That's good. Thank you very much. Thanks. Next up is a presentation from Dialogue and Resolution Services. Welcome.
Mayor and Council and staff, thanks so much for the opportunity to speak with you, and also thanks for the grant that you gave us last year. We're applying for a little bit more this year for $3,500, but essentially for the same program. Okay, so how do I use this? I figured it out. Thank you. So as you know, we've been in the Greater Victoria area for 40 years under different names, but we've been in Colwood since 2008. And we provide a wide range of conflict resolution services, including mediation, coaching, arbitration, as well as lots of education programs. We do conflict resolution for everybody, but the focus of our work this evening is for those families who are going through separation and or divorce, have no money with which to make that major life transition and need the support of mediators to help them to work through. There's a lot that happens. You know, when we think of separation and divorce, we tend to think, oh, well, you know, like division of assets, right? But so much of it has to do with ensuring that the two parents in the family are able to continue to be effective parents and that the children continue to be able to have access to the adults that they love. And it's really hard for families when they're going through this kind of thing, when they have financial stresses on top of that. Everybody suffers, and particularly the children suffer. So what we started to do a couple of years ago now is we began to offer something called supported family mediation service, which provides 8 hours of free mediation. And over the last year, we had 32 families participating in this in the region, and 9 of these families were residents in Colwood. 5 of them were supported by the funding that you provided for us last year. And so we're asking for funding for 5 families. One of the things that we began to realize in 2017 was that families that had coaching, private coaching, individual coaching before they started to work on mediation had a shorter mediation process and were able to create better agreements. And that's because the coaching helped them to understand what is the best interest of the child anyway, and realize that the best interest of the child isn't necessarily just what mom or dad thinks, but there's a medium, a place where they can collaborate on what's really the best interest for the child. So that's a big part of it. And another part of it is that people have a hard time distinguishing between marital issues, you know, the arguments that I'm having with my spouse, and the arguments that I'm having about parenting stuff. And so when we provide coaching that helps people make that distinction and recognize that an argument about Johnny's hockey isn't really about how you never answer my texts, right? And a lot of people, they confuse things. And so when they learn to be able to separate what the issues are, they're more able to be more effective. So that's what we're doing. And early data does show that people who have coaching do better in mediation subsequently. So potentially that becomes 16 hours of free service for some families, but it's more likely to be 3 hours of coaching and 5 hours of mediation, or 5 hours of coaching and 3 hours of mediation, or some combination. So I'll stop there, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Open it up to the public. Committee. No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is HAT, Habitat Acquisition Trust. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Alana Nasadik, and I'm with HAT, or the Habitat Acquisition Trust, for those who don't yet know us. I'm the Community and Development Coordinator, and we are Victoria's local land trust protecting nature across South Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands, including over 4,300 acres of habitat through conservation covenants and ownership. And we are pleased to be the conservation covenant holders for Havenwood Park in collaboration with the owners, the City of Colwood. I stand before you today to request a grant and aid in support of stewarding Havenwood Park for nature in the amount of $2,500. We propose to host 2 habitat restoration work parties to engage community members in protecting nature locally and to maintain the natural features of Havenwood Park. We're focusing primarily on removing invasive species and the educational components of identifying non-native species and understanding the local ecosystems present in the park. This builds upon the collaborative work of HAT, the City of Colwood, Greater Victoria Green Team, Friends of Havenwood Park, and the Royal Bay Secondary students. The grant will allow us to follow up on management of ecologically sensitive areas of the park, including the Garry Oak rock outcrops, the coastal Douglas fir forest, and the seasonal wetlands and creeks in the park. as well as ongoing restoration and maintenance of the Grand Rose Terrace habitat restorations and plantings that took place in 2015 and 2017. The two community restoration events will directly engage Colwood community members, volunteers, students, local experts, and HAT staff to reduce the threat posed by major invasive plant populations, including English ivy, Scotch broom, and Himalayan blackberry. Through this project, HAT will foster a community that values the ecological aesthetic values of this park to ensure these efforts are sustained by future generations. And without funding, HAT will be unable to continue this important work that provides such a positive, lasting community impact. We wanted to thank Council for granting us your support in 2017 and give you a little recap here. Last year's grant allowed us to host a public habitat restoration day on March 25th, 2017, involving 36 volunteers and removing 22 cubic meters of invasive daphne, broom, ivy, blackberry, and a few other invasive plants. We've been keeping the newly planted area weeded and free to grow naturally, and we expose people from across Victoria and actually around the world to Colwood, its hospitality, and including those delicious Royal Bay Bakery treats. I know we talked about Royal Bay Bakery earlier. And we also hosted a second day in October 21st. We brought together 7 volunteers to remove Scotch broom and Daphne laureola. This was more detailed work. We were returning to the rocky outcrops where there had been some baby broom coming up, and we really didn't want those seeding, so we got those guys, nipped them in the bud. So that was great. I just wanted to show some photos. And the reason for 7 volunteers in October was it was a very rainy day, so we're very grateful to those volunteers that did come. That's the 22 cubic meters. And as you can see, all kinds of people from the community of all ages got to take part, which is very exciting. And those are those delicious treats that we were sponsored. Gotta throw those in there. Do we want to roll back and drool at those a little bit? Okay. And you might wonder, why do we do these projects? Why do they matter? Why are we investing time in removing weeds? So I just wanted to share a little bit of our purpose and vision behind the work with you.
Just a minute left.
A minute left, okay. We remove invasive species because this park represents rare and at-risk ecosystems. So Gary Oak wetlands and coastal Douglas fir. And without action, this space could easily be overrun by a handful of weed species. So, for example, from the perspective of a pollinator like a bee, that would be absolutely devastating. They may have blackberry bushes blooming for maybe one point of the year, but then it would become barren for them for the rest of the year. So we're teaching today's landowners and tomorrow's caregivers for nature in Colwood and beyond. And Colwood shares our goals, and we want to achieve them together. So I saw in the official community plan draft that Colwood identifies people and nature being exceptionally well connected and carbon neutrality as a goal. So this works towards those shared goals that we have. And if I have a little bit more time, just showing you a little bit about what Havenwood Park is and why we should be celebrating caring for this space. It's 16.5 hectares. It's protected forever with a conservation covenant, so it needs continuous stewardship. It has 5 different wetlands filtering water and buffering against floods, and it's home to rare species, including the Nuttall's quillwort that could easily be lost to invasive species, as well as the at-risk Propertius dusky-winged butterfly. And then there are diverse ecosystems here providing resiliency to climate change, thriving plant communities that reduce carbon in the atmosphere, and the mature trees and snags provide habitat for guys like this beautiful merlin up there. So thank you for considering this application. We're looking forward to stewarding Havenwood Park forevermore.
Thank you, Alana.
Thanks.
Open it up to the public. Chris?
I don't know offhand, but I could follow up with that. Sorry, I don't know offhand, but I could follow up with the amount of cash that's on hand for 2017. We're finalizing our annual reporting for our AGM at the end of the month, so the new annual report isn't quite out yet.
Thank you. Committee? Oh, seeing none. Oh, Mayor?
Alana, do you folks receive funding through CRD?
We don't receive funding directly through CRD, but we do partner with them, so more like in-kind support.
Okay, because they've just recently undertaken to create a invasive species coordinator through CRD, and I just wonder how...
Oh, the position?
Yeah,
Okay,
and
yeah.
so I'm just wondering what the interaction and that sort of thing will be, and probably not what you could answer, but going forward, once that position is undertaken and things get in, so it may well be an opportunity for other funding sources to come through, should that happen.
That's great perspective. Yeah, I'm sure we'll follow through with that when we know more.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Next up is Makoa Housing.
We're just waiting on our power.
Oh, yeah.
So this is Kevin Albers, CEO of Makoa Housing Society, and I'm Charlotte Huber, Communications and Indigenous Relations. And we're here today to talk about the 2018 West Shore Indigenous Day Festival. And first, we want to acknowledge being on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish, especially Esquimalt, Songhees, Beecher Bay, and Sauk First Nation.
A little bit more about our vision and mission. Oh, I better talk into this, right? Makola operates throughout the province of BC, headquartered in Langford. Actually, we're providing affordable housing options to over 5,000 family members in the province. I think we're here today to talk about the kinds of things that we do to make investments in the community and to be able to reach out to other community partners and service providers and nations and municipalities to work together to put on community events. And that's really why we're here today to talk to the council and mayor of Colwood.
And so this is the 4th year of the West Shore Aboriginal Day Festival. This year it's changing to Indigenous Day Festival because the day has changed. And our very first festival, we had about 100 people come at Veterans Memorial Park. Last year was the first year we hosted in Colwood at West Shore Parks and Recreation. We had more than 1,200 people attend. Every year we've doubled our numbers, and we wouldn't have been growing without our partnerships. This is the very first year we've reached out to any West Shore municipalities for support in funding, and we've reached out to all 5 West Shore municipalities.
We did conveniently notice that a number of the objectives within the official community plan really speak clearly to the mission and the mandate of the Aboriginal Day Festival or Indigenous Day Festival. So I want to point that out to you and draw the connection to those two things.
And our festival is hosted by 8 Aboriginal serving organizations, including Makola Housing Society. We have a variety of partners. We've already received a grant for this upcoming festival from Victoria Foundation. More than 10 First Nations attend. We have about a dozen First Nations drum and dance groups come in and perform, and we're really creating a hub here on the West Shore. We have school kids from Sauk School District bussed out to attend. We've actually had School District 61 ask if their View Royal students can also attend, so we're really building this event.
Yeah, just in summary, it's really about trying to bring all the partners together, really trying to take all the municipalities that are in the West Shore to come together and support the event as a West Shore event. And really all we are is sort of the tool to try and bring everybody together and show that we're all the service providers, the agencies, like I mentioned, the First Nations are working together with municipalities to be able to offer this to the community of the West Shore. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Open it up to the public. Seeing none, committee. Rob?
Thank you. Unfortunately, your budget you sent us was like your entire budget, so which is huge. But I'm looking at your project cost. So your project cost looks like it's about $22,000 in total, and then so with our grant at $2,500, I was just trying to figure out where are you getting the rest of those funds to make up that $22,000?
So we've received $7,000 $7,000 from Victoria Foundation. We're reaching out to all 5 West Shore municipalities. Each year we've received funding from First Nations Health Authority. Each year we've received funding from Fortis BC, Van City, RBC. So we reach out to a variety of sponsors. And the one thing about our number of our festival, which is why it might be a bit higher than another one, is we offer everything for free. We want to reduce the barriers of cost and finances, so all of our food and beverage is free, all of our activities, like a family of 6 could come and have lunch and participate. So the funding really leads to this to be a celebration and inclusive for everyone.
Thank you. May I just do a follow-up? Just as a quick follow-up, last year's, and I understand that you're going to have escalating costs because you're having escalating participation, which is, but is that $22,000? Is that roughly what it cost you last year, or where was your event cost last year?
I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I know we did increase it because every year it's growing, and the big cost for us is food.
Okay. Thank you.
Cynthia.
I always have a little trouble with my other hats that are sort of on my head, but I just wanted to throw out there that you could make an application to the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice Committee, who I think would be very happy to participate in funding your event, because it does do that inclusivity, and certainly Family Court is really interested in building those connections between First Nations and with First Nations.
Thank you, Charlie and Kevin. Great to see you. Thank you. Next up is a presentation from the Open Gate Church. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman and everyone present, thank you very much for allowing me to speak to this grant application. My name is the Reverend Andrew Hewlett, or Pastor Andrew, at Open Gate Anglican Network Church, which is in the Langford area near West Hills. We've been there for about 10 years. And we're requesting a grant to help fund a new initiative in the West Shore of partnering with a group called the Living Edge to provide fresh produce for those in need in the West Shore area. And this is a new initiative, but last year we were contacted by this group called the Living Edge, which is a ministry to the disadvantaged people in downtown Victoria, based out of the Quadra Village community down there, but they actually do work throughout the Victoria area, and they partner with the Mustard Seed and the Victoria Food Share Network and a number of other organizations for providing meals and support and different types of food to those in need downtown. And they've decided they need to really spread out this work that they're doing. So they contacted us last year, partly because we have a connection, sort of a mutual connection through Church of Our Lord, historic church downtown. And Living Edge asked if we'd be willing to partner with them for doing a fresh produce distribution for those in need in the West Shore area. And since this was something that wasn't being done by the food banks, they don't focus on fresh produce, we felt there was a real need in the area to do this. So we've decided to partner with them. And we started on November 17th, and it's been going well. We've been renting, it's provided actually free to us, the Masonic Hall near the Veterans Memorial Park. They're providing that free for us between 10 o'clock on Friday and 2 p.m. Every Friday, and then we're open for distributing food for those in need between noon and 1:30. And we've been doing this, and we started small. We haven't done a lot of advertising, but we started, it's just, I guess, a little under 2 months ago, every Friday, with just about 20 people showing up. But it seems to increase every week, and now we've got about 70 or 80 that are showing up for that. And we've been supported by, groups like the Health Center on Whale Road, WorkLink. They've got a letter of support for us, as does the food bank as well. And they've been directing people to us for this, and they're very supportive of what we've been doing. And we haven't done a poll but we know that just through anecdotal evidence and talking with the people, that there's a significant number of those people that have been coming that are from the Colwood area, because we know there's need for people here. And it seems to be growing. We anticipate that we'll perhaps be having up to 200 people coming to have their needs met by this. So we find it's very exciting. We find during the day, too, there's moms with kids, but there's also elderly people, single people. We don't have a criteria on who can receive the food. It's basically anyone who is in need, we'll provide that for them. We've been partnering with the Living Edge, which has this wider network. We wanted to tap into their expertise. So they have a food network with the mustard seed, and they have drivers and vans, and they go around and pick all this stuff up, and they bring it out to us. So we're partnering with them, and it's been very well received, very positive. It's good food, it's healthy food, so we feel good about giving that to people. And we're able to do this on keeping our costs down, because the volunteers at our church are able to help out. And we've had other people from the community come and say, hey, we'd be willing to help out as well. So that's very positive. So we have we're requesting a $3,000 grant from Colwood, but we'll also be requesting $3,000 from Langford as well. And we're confident that they'll support this. And so I encourage you to support it. I think this is a great initiative, and people have been very excited about that. And of course, it's, as the way it usually is, it's been a great blessing to us involved in this ministry, as well as the people that it's been serving. So thank you for considering this.
Great. Thank you, Pastor Andrew. I'll open it up to the public. Well, seeing none, committee? Mayor? Oh,
Mayor can go first. Okay.
Just a quick one. So is it focusing primarily on fresh produce?
That's correct. Now, we've had some days where the food bank, they've had a bit of an overflow. So some days they've brought all kinds of good food to us when they've sort of run out of room. And we've been able to distribute that. But the focus is on fresh produce, what the food banks aren't doing. That's the focal point, yeah.
And that's being obtained through?
Through the mustard seed and through this food sharing network in Victoria. Okay. There's also one other source out in the West Shore that's provided some food as well. But most of it at this point in time comes from downtown.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Rob?
Thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. The working poor is one of the most hidden groups that are out there, so it's very much appreciate the work you're doing. The one question I have for you, though, is because you are a church, is there any overt religious when it comes to providing the food and that? So I wanted to ask that question.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We specifically aren't doing this to promo our church. We've got a banner up there that says West Shore Food Market, I think. And our approach and what we've been telling people, if people ask who you are, feel free to say, our connections, at least some of them, through Open Gate Church. But we really want to have a low-key approach, because this is not something just to promo our church. We're wanting to do this to serve the people. So, yeah, we have a very low-key approach in that regard. We're sensitive to that.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next up is a presentation from the Peninsula Streams Society. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman and Council. This is the first time I've been here. I've done this for many years on the Peninsula to Central Saanich, Sydney, North Saanich, and Saanich. So I'm here tonight to talk about the Millstream Fishway project. And this is a grant request. It'll be a one-time only grant request. The grant will be matched 100% by Department of Fisheries and Oceans. And I guess I'm going to get to the next slide. So, that one? Okay, about Peninsula Stream Society. So, incorporated in 2002. We have 4 staff, 120 members, 200 volunteers. and we've had successful projects all over the Saanich Peninsula. This is our first real foray into the Western communities. And we were invited actually by Goldstream Volunteer Hatchery to spearhead this opportunity to build the fishway. And so we're worked very closely with Goldstream Hatchery to build the fishway. I'll talk a little bit about it. If you look up on the map, we have the Atkins Road Culvert, which isn't too far upstream from Esquimalt Harbor. And the Goldstream volunteers have worked with the Esquimalt anglers with some funding, I think, and support from Colwood in the past, as well as town of View Royal and Langford, in getting fish up the creek to the Atkins Road Culvert. And that's a work they've done over 25 years. And they've successfully introduced fish, juvenile fish from the hatchery above Atkins Road Culvert, all the way up to Finlayson Arm Road and further. That's resulted in returns of coho of up to 700 fish that came back in 2016. So a little bit more. Here's Millstream here, and you can see it goes through parts of View Royal, Colwood, Langford, and up into the Highlands. And this is the Colwood section of the creek. You pick up a little bit, not much, but some of it's within the city limit boundary. And again, here's a location of the Atkins Road Culvert, just by, and it's in CRD Park. So right now we're working with CRD Park's senior staff on it as far as the location. And there's the Finlayson Arm Bridge. And we hope to get fish up to Finlayson Arm Road, at least to Matson Lake. And we're supported in this, Bear Mountain Eco-Oasis has been supportive so far, as well as other partners. And that's the culvert itself. It doesn't look like a big barrier, but if you're a fish trying to get up to that and then through that culvert, it's quite difficult. So the idea is that on the right-hand side, facing it, we would build a step pool fishway, much like what was built over the dam at Todd Inlet, the Butcher's Dam, just recently by the same engineers. This last year, we'd be doing an engineering phase, and we raised the money for that, and the design is we're going to be bringing that to CRD Parks at the end of this month to move forward into the construction phase in 2017 or 2018-19. That's the culvert itself. That's Todd Columbia from CRD Parks in the culvert with myself. And this is our budget, which is, I'll have to go through. This is the budget for 2017 and 2018, mostly engineering. And this is the proposed budget for 2017-18, and of course it's pretty well over now, but we got enough money, found enough money to get the project going ahead. And this is the 18-19 budget. Basically, we're looking for $205,000 to match the RFCPP, the DFO money, to complete the construction. And these are the supporting organizations. We've come to you for $16,000, going to Langford for $25,000. Langford put in $10,000 last year, and View Royal put in $2,500 last year as well. So we'll be asking them for more. And time for questions, I think.
Right on. Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll open it up to the public if you have questions. Seeing none. Committee? Cynthia.
I'm just curious on your spreadsheet, maybe it was just the engineering, but CRD looked like they were up for about $12,000 investment in it. And I'm just wondering why, since the culvert's in the park, why they're not more on board with that.
Well, actually, we thought CRD would be more involved in terms of providing cash. But as you know, and as I found out since, is that usually CRD is funded by the municipalities of which the facility's in. The culvert itself is upstream of the culverts in CRD Parks, downstream of the culverts in CRD Parks. The culvert itself is in Langford. So the road right-of-way is within Langford. And CRD Parks said that they don't have any money for this. They don't do salmon enhancement. That's what I was told by the director.
Okay. I thought the parks are pretty important. So, and salmon, of course, are very important to all of our ecosystems.
Well, I think so too.
Yeah.
You've got buy-in. Okay. Any further questions from committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, next up is the Royal Canadian Legion. I knew I saw somebody. Welcome.
Welcome. I'm used to saying that myself. Thank you very much for Mayor and Council allowing us to come here tonight and speak on behalf of the Royal Canadian Legion in Langford. And we appreciate the support of a quick response this past December and the support for funding a Christmas dinner for the less fortunate in the West Shore community. I got to tell you that we served 262 people. We gave every family home with a bag of Christmas dinner goodies. We gave every children up to the age of 19 a gift to take home. And it was nothing but a total success. We had partnership from Thrifty Foods, which was a big partner, Langford Municipal Hall, and also Colwood. So we're looking for the support again, if we can, from Colwood to help us out with, it's approximately about an $8,000 venture with our total costs. It's amazing when you think that amount of people cost that much, but food costs aren't cheap. Mm-hmm. So we do take some of our money out of our gaming. We had permission last year, whether we'll get it next year, to be able to do this through our gaming funds. But we do use some of our gaming funds to put this through also. So that's all.
Great. Thank you, Norm. Anyone from the public have any questions or comments? Committee? Rob?
Actually, it's through the chair to staff. Can I just clarify the Remembrance Day? Has that gone in the core now? Did that $2,000 contribution that we're, or is that later on this evening? It's later on this evening. It's in core.
It's in core.
It's in core. Okay.
Would you like me to speak about that, or?
Sure, if you want to. Sure.
Yeah. No, I have no problem. Basically, over the years, and I can't give you how many years that Colwood has supported our Remembrance Day celebration that encompasses all of West Shore. As some of you that have been there know that it is a humongous event. We only want to get it better and better and better, and so that last year was a prime time for it to be achieving a really big accomplishment in the essence to where we had the whole street shut down for the 2-minute silence, which I find in today's November 11th, people are forgetting what November 11th means and the essence of the 2-minute silence and why we do the 2-minute silence. And this is part of what we do for the event. We give out lunch, as we call it, after for the children, the youth, and the adults in our hall. And we really support and thank you for your support over the years that you have given to the Royal Canadian Legion.
You're most welcome. Thank you. Not seeing any further questions, so that's it. Thank you, Norm.
Thank you.
Next up is South Mid Vancouver Island Zone Veterans Housing Society, or Cockrell House. And I understand there's no presentation tonight, but I just wanted to make sure we didn't exclude them in case they arrived. Mayor?
Just to say that Angus resides in Souk, and given the time of the meeting and coming back and forth, unable to get in a timely way.
Fair enough. Thank you for that. Okay, we'll move on then to the Stigma-Free Society. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here this evening. My name is Robin Thomas, and I am the Community Development Manager for the Stigma-Free Society. Some of you might know us formerly as the Bipolar Disorder Society of BC, or Bipolar Babes. So the mandate of our society is really to stomp out stigma through awareness, education, and support. So our main focus is to end discrimination and help empower people through our peer support programs as well as through our education efforts. And our overall mission is really to reduce the stigma, in particular with mental illness. So one of the primary ways in which we do that is our presentations, which we give both in the community and to schools. So in our presentations, which I should add, all of our presenters as well as our peer supporters have lived experience of mental illness, myself included, and so that really allows us to have an extra ability to connect with both adults and youth. So in our presentation, students will learn the damage caused by stigma and by bullying, how to transform judgments into understanding, and really understanding that mental health does affect all of us to some degree. And so our presentations really normalize mental illness, and so many students come up to us afterwards and say that, wow, for the first time I feel I can talk about what's going on for me. As well, we offer wellness tools and really the importance of reaching out for help. So in terms of enhancing community well-being for the city of Colwood, we plan to deliver presentations in the city of Colwood area to over 250 students. In the past, we have presented to Dunsmuir Middle School, Royal Bay Secondary, Belmont, École John Stubbs, and Pacific Secondary Alternate School. And we've done this to great success based on feedback and surveys. So we do hope to continue these presentations in the future, and thank you for your support in the past. I'd like to give you this Colwood student feedback. This is from a Royal Bay Secondary student who writes, "I really enjoyed having this presentation because it helped me to open my mind to see things differently and to focus on not making judgments. We all need to start respecting others and listen to them, and if we do this a little bit every single day, things are going to change in schools and society. Thank you for this amazing conversation." On top of this, I mentioned we also offer peer support programs, which of course are open to citizens of Colwood. We have a co-ed support group for adults, we have a women's only support group, and we have a teens to 20s support group for youth. And one youth from our support group writes that knowing that I'm not alone in my struggles makes a huge difference. So they really do make a difference and impact people's lives. We also offer online resources, tools to live stigma-free, as well as, of course, community support and resources. And thank you so much. Receiving the funding from this grant allows us to continue to provide these community presentations and these school presentations and our peer support groups. And really, these programs make a huge difference in the lives of people who feel a greater sense of hope, less isolation, and an understanding that no matter what our challenges, we can all live really meaningful and productive and joyful lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Anyone from the public? Let's see, none. Committee? No, that's great.
Thank you so
very much for your time. Next up is Vancouver Island South Film and Media Commission. Oh, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Hamilton and councillors. My name is Brian Globus. I'm the Production Services Coordinator for the Vancouver Island South Film and Media Commission. The Film Commissioner, Kathleen Gilbert, is away this week, so I'm here to present to you our community grant application for 2018. This year, we've requested a grant of $3,000 to continue promoting the locations, crew, and services of the City of Colwood to the domestic and international film and television industry. We hope that you'll consider granting this amount in full to invest in an industry with substantial economic impact in your municipality and great potential for future growth. The Film Commission is a non-profit economic development office. We were established in 1971 by the then president of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, Brian Small. Playing an instrumental role in bringing the motion picture 5 Easy Pieces starring Jack Nicholson to Vancouver Island, followed by a string of other Hollywood pictures, Brian saw the potential for the local industry and opened up the region's first film commission to attract productions. 47 years later, the commission has evolved into its own entity, funded at the municipal and provincial level and part of a network of film offices across the province. Colwood has seen an exceptional year in production, with major motion pictures Deadpool 2 with Ryan Reynolds, Richard Says Goodbye with Johnny Depp, both filming at Hatley Castle this year. Multiple television commercials, including Volvo and Macy's, chose Fisgard Lighthouse as their primary location. All of these productions paid rental fees to local institutions, hired local crew, and made use of businesses and services in the area. With popular locations and a wide range of services, Colwood is well poised to generate future growth and capitalize on an industry that is currently expanding exponentially across the province. The film industry in British Columbia, as you may know, currently brings in $3 billion a year into the economy and employs over 65,000 BC residents. It has the highest employment growth of any sector. This is very good news for the municipalities of the capital region. Studios in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland are at capacity. Productions are looking elsewhere in the province and naturally to the closest city centre of Greater Victoria. An investor group is currently looking at turning an available warehouse complex into a full-scale movie production studio. Production executives have already toured the space and approved it as a potential facility. With the help of communities like Colwood, local and provincial governments, and the addition of a film studio, there is no reason why the CRD cannot attract a minimum 10% of that $3 billion, which would represent $300 million in direct spend to the region. Generating this level of sustainable economic impact requires an immense effort to sell the locations, services, and expertise of the region to producers and provide extensive logistical support once a major production arrives. To do this, the Film Commission requires sufficient and sustainable funding. In some contrast to the good news in BC and in our region, the Film Commission has unfortunately experienced cuts to an already modest operating budget. In a time when our services are in great demand and the potential for growth in the creative sector has never been higher, we find ourselves without adequate resources to fully staff an office and market proactively to an industry with all eyes on expansion to our region. With this in mind, we ask you to please help us achieve our realistic goal of achieving continuous production in the region with the best year-round filming climate in the country, a highly skilled crew base, and a business community dedicated to serving the industry. In addition to our primary role of marketing the region to film productions, we have been working hard in recent years to develop the creative talent and labor pool in the region with training workshops and career events.
Just a minute.
1 minute, okay. The need to develop the local crew base has been identified in order to offset the costs of production visiting from the U.S., our largest market to the south, and other regions. Last year, we held the region's first film and media production career fair. The event was attended by 1,800 job seekers who spoke to working professionals about getting trained for the industry. We also held professional skills workshops in areas such as production accounting and hair and makeup to help people with related training to transition into film production. We do all our work with a staff of 3, 2 of which are hourly employees without health and benefits. A major goal for our organization moving forward will be to have 3 salaried positions and increase our marketing budget to become more proactive in our strategy to reach film producers worldwide. Thank you for your time this evening and for recognizing the potential of the film industry to have a positive economic and social impact in your community of Colwood. Good evening, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Anyone from the public? Seeing none? Committee? Rob?
Thank you. Obviously, one of the things that you mentioned was that Rural Roads has benefited significantly from some filming this last year. Under your corporate sponsorships, have you received any money from Rural Roads? Like the way you're asking us for grants, have you even applied?
Yes, we are currently negotiating an agreement with Rural Roads for a sponsorship. I believe that they were a sponsor in past years, and then that was discontinued for a number of years. But this year we have, the success of filming there has been has been great. So yeah, they have agreed to come on board as a sponsor. I don't have the amount with me, but
No, as long as they're good doing it, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. That's it. Thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Okay, the Victoria Compost and Conservation Education Society. I have a note here that there isn't a presentation, but I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss them. And the West Shore Arts Council. Nope. Okay, we'll go on to the Wounded Warrior Run of British Columbia. Thank you very much and welcome.
Mayor Hamilton and Council, thank you so much for having us. My name is Jacqueline Zwang, and I'm here with Bob Gebbe, who's a team member. I'm the director for the Wounded Warrior Run BC, and this year is our 5th annual run. Essentially what we're doing is running the length of Vancouver Island from Port Hardy to Victoria, and we're raising funds and awareness for Wounded Warriors Canada. This year, we've asked you for a minimum $1,000 donation. And I just want to talk a little bit about why this run started. Back 5 years ago, there had been a rash of suicides amongst our veterans. And so 2 of our currently serving members decided to do something. And they thought, well, we like to run. So why don't we do an event where we raise awareness amongst Vancouver Island and then give the money to Wounded Warriors Canada. So they chose February because it was the worst possible time to do it and made it that much harder. And four serving members ran the length of Vancouver Island in just 7 days as a relay. They had a goal of raising $5,000 and they ended up raising $20,000. So right away, the response was truly incredible. As the run has evolved from a grassroots organization, it has aligned with Wounded Warriors Canada. And so our support and budget that was presented is all from Wounded Warriors Canada. The funds that we raise, anything that comes in from Vancouver Island actually comes back to Vancouver Island from the rest of Canada tenfold. We actually have 3 programs out of the 12 that Wounded Warriors Canada offers that happen right here on Vancouver Island. One of them is compassionate service dogs. Wounded Warriors Canada is the leading funder of compassionate service dogs for veterans and first responders, which is a 2-year process if you receive a service dog, and that's quite the cost, and 100% of that is funded so that the member doesn't have to bear any of those costs. Qualicum Beach houses Vancouver Island compassionate dogs, and there's a number of people on our team who have those dogs, actually. The other one is called the COPE program, and it is held at Bear Mountain. There's been about 10 programs that have run, which has helped over 50 couples. And the cost of that is about $13,000 per couple for the time that they're doing the program. So that's why the amount that anything coming into Vancouver Island is actually coming back to us tenfold, because the remainder of that is funded by Wounded Warriors Canada. Recently, Couples Overcoming PTSD Every Day is what COPE stands for, and it's an innovative program because it was determined a couple years ago that you can't just treat PTSD as an individual. It also affects the family and it affects other people around them. So by treating the couple, you're actually helping to have better outcomes and more positive relationships moving forward. A lot of relationships suffer when it comes to PTSD, so it's helping those people move forward with techniques together. And in fact, there are actually spouses who are now being diagnosed with PTSD from living with somebody with PTSD. So it's really important that we treat the whole problem. Recently, in October, there was another program that was launched in Souk called the Trauma Resiliency Program. And this offers individuals group-based counseling that helps people to figure out how to deal with their symptoms of PTSD. And it happens over 2 different sessions, and the second one just graduated this weekend, actually. All of those programs are available to our first responders, veterans, currently serving military, and their families. So it's truly inclusive of everybody in our communities. We're specifically asking all of the mayor and council on Vancouver Island. So we have requested funding in various ways, depending on if they ask for grants or not. We have so far received $2,500 from the city of Campbell River, and we have received word that we won't be getting anything from Port Hardy or Victoria, and we're still waiting for information on the rest. The reason why we asked for all of the Vancouver Island's mayor and council is because we do believe that we're all in this together. We believe that all of our first responders stand up for us every single day and keep us safe, and it's the least we could do to give back to them and support them in what they're doing for us every day. Specifically, the run is being the 5th year is really gained some momentum, and we have a lot of media coverage this year. We have also asked Mayor Hamilton to be our guest speaker at our media launch on February the 1st at the Pattison Subaru. So that's our other request, along with the grant. All I have.
Great. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Open it up to the public. Seeing none, committee? That's it. Thank you very much for your time. And our final presentation tonight is from the Youth for Christ Victoria. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Claudio Arancibia, and I'll be representing Youth for Christ tonight. Our executive director was unable to attend. And first of all, I'd like to begin by thanking you for the grant that you gave us last year. It gave us the ability to host the hip-hop group, motivational group that presented in schools. We were able to present to over 3,000 students last year with that group, and so we really appreciate that you invested in that last year. This year, what I'd like to talk to you about is a program called Heroes. And what Heroes is, and you can see the curriculum as it's going by the student manuals, it's a 10-week curriculum that we present in schools for 1 hour a week, and we present it to grade 6 students. The program comes from Calgary by a nonprofit organization there called Impact Society, and they've been presenting this curriculum in Calgary and in Alberta for just over 15 years now. And the way that it works is it's a resiliency and strength-finding curriculum that we present to grade 6 students. And it's 4 steps that we like to present to the kids, and the process looks like this. We begin by building confidence in students. So we help them discover and build their strengths, their abilities, and their gifts, which leads to an increase in confidence in young people. And then we move on to the next step, which builds on, and every step builds on one another. The second step would be choosing character. The idea behind this is, as our confidence increases, positive choices are made based on who we are internally rather than our circumstances. So we're teaching our kids that circumstances don't define them, more so who they really are. And then what we do is we move on to what we like to call act with integrity, or step up in integrity. And so as our confidence and our character increases, our behaviors then begin to reflect our core values. And then what we do is we finish with what we call live with purpose. So living with confidence and character and integrity helps us to understand our purpose and our significance. Once we understand that, then we understand our own value. Understanding our own value then helps us to value others, whether that looks that can look to take shape, whether that's in the classroom or in the school or in the home or more so in the community. So it builds on itself. These are the core values that we're trying to teach these students. What Impact Society did and has done very well for the last 10 years is they've tracked all their data for students that have taken this course. And what they have found was students that have finished the HEROES program see an increase in self-esteem by 23%. Their empathy increases by 26%. Planning and decision-making has an increase of up to 33%. And then a belief in self-success is as high as 35%. That's just after 10 weeks. The kids do a questionnaire at the very beginning of the 10 weeks. We go through the program. At the end of the 10 weeks, we give them the same questionnaire. And then we just see the stats, and we see the growth in the students. I'm an instructor of the program. I get to see it firsthand. And so I can give you stats, and I can explain the program to you. What I'd like to do is tell you a couple stories. I'm a storyteller, and that's how I communicate best. Last year, we had one student who very early on in our program shared with us some of the language that she was hearing at home. You're not worth it, you have no value, you have no voice. And she shared this with me through the program. Very early on, I was able to address that and speak to that specifically the rest of the time that I was teaching this program. And the impact was unbelievable. I want to say that it was a 180-degree turn in this girl's confidence, in the way she acted, in the way she believed in herself. She used to hide behind her hat or her hoodie, which was a sign of checking out, not wanting to be part of community. After we went through this program, anytime I saw her in the school, anytime we taught the class, I spoke directly into that. And I still deal with this student on a daily basis. I see her at the breakfast program that I run at Spencer Middle School, and it's a completely different person. She comes in, you can see it physically. She walks taller. She doesn't hide behind the hat. She is very outgoing. Her circle of friends has grown. She's actually really funny, and she used to hide, and she wouldn't say a word. Now she has us laughing all the time. Another story that I'd like to share with you is another student and over here at Dunsmuir. And what we were doing in class was we were running a demonstration about the power of words. And so I had the students share negative words with me, and I wrote those words on little sticky notes. And then I had the same students give me positive words, and I wrote those on sticky notes. And I had a volunteer student come up, and what I did was I pasted the negative words on that student, and I told him, this is what we think of you. We think you're a loser. We think you suck. We think that you're not worth it. And what happened to that student was that you could see him shrink physically as I pasted the stickers on him. By the time I was done, he was hiding behind me, and the class was losing their minds. You can't say that. You're bullying him. They defended him. They stood up for him. The second part of that exercise was that they got to come up and peel off one of the negative words and put on a positive word. So they said to him, you are not a loser, you are a winner. And the exercise went on. And the cool thing was this boy just kind of, again, just grew beside me and grew taller. And what he did was he took those stickers and he put them on his desk, and he circled them and he's colored them. And now he's got them there, and he reminds himself every day, this is who I am. This is the self-worth that I have. This is the value that I carry. And that grows people. And it grows people into loving their community, into investing into their community. And we're just growing young people, letting them know you have a voice, you matter, you have worth. And that's what this program does. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Open it up to the public. No, committee? No? Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. Okay, so this is where the tough work begins, and I will say I think we're always amazed at just the phenomenal work that happens by every group that presents to us every year, and it is really a challenge, I think, for all of us to figure out and to grant funds based on a certain pot of money. But endeavor we will, and Councillor Martin brought it up a little bit earlier, but I thought I'd just remind folks that last year Council gave staff direction to include certain amounts in the budget, in the main part of the core budget for certain activities. That being Fort Rod Hill and the Fiskard Lighthouse Canada Day celebrations for $1,500, the Bike to Work Society for $1,500, the Greater Victoria Volunteer Society for $1,000, IACTI, so the Intermunicipal Advisory Committee on Disability Issues for $1,300, the Royal Bay Secondary School Dry Grad for $1,000, the Royal Canadian Legion for $2,500, and the West Shore Arts Council for $5,000. So those are already part of the budget and don't factor into the pot of money that we are dealing with tonight. Thank you. So with that, as I mentioned off the top, we will start at the top of our list and try to get some consensus on an amount, and we'll see what we end up with at the end. First is Anawim Companion Society. They did not request last year, or weren't granted last year, and their request this year is $1,500. What's the committee's? I'm not looking for a motion, but maybe some comments, and then Cynthia?
Sorry, I had a question, and I was busy trying to think of my questions. I wasn't listening very well just now, so pardon me if I butt in.
I wasn't listening either.
Rob usually gets that.
You know, sometimes when you're thinking, you can't listen at the same time. It was just in regards to, because the West Shore Arts Council is listed as those that you were listing off that we've included as a line item in the budget. But we also had on our list the West Shore Arts Council for the Core Arts Operating Society for $500 in our spreadsheet that we're working on at the table here. They didn't present tonight. And I just wanted to make sure that we weren't mixing up the South Island Association for the Arts, or SASI, however that's called, with the West Shore Arts Council, which supports all the arts.
I don't believe so, but Chris, maybe you have.
Through the chair, the West Shore Arts Council this year submitted a letter requesting a 10% increase to what is already in that core funding, which equals $500. Yeah.
Okay, I see. Okay, that helps me greatly. Thank you, and I'll try to listen better now.
So we're going to start at the top, and you had a question before we.
I do. Sir, may I?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. So before we start talking from the top, the one I want to talk about just briefly through you to staff is the $16,000 Peninsula Streams Society project that they had. Because one of the things they had mentioned is that this is just a one-time ask.
So Rob, can I just stop you? I think we can ask that question as we make our way down the list.
Well,
okay, because
what I want to understand is if there's funding outside of this that we could do.
Can that not be asked in order?
Well, you could. However, it makes a big difference around the $16,000 if I have to consider it or not with everybody else's. No, I'll wait if you're telling me to wait. Are you telling me to wait?
Yes, let's
wait. Okay, then I'll
let's
wait.
Start at the top and keep some order here. Decorum, for heaven's sakes. Okay, Anawim House. What's the desire of committee? Jason?
I'll start the ball rolling here. I am evaluating all of these based on real service to citizens of Colwood. The citizens of Colwood did not elect me to give away their tax money to charitable organizations, however great they must be. So I'm going to take a very hard-nosed look at all of these, and things like HAT, where they're actually doing maintenance work in our park. Things like the Macola Housing, where they're actually doing an Indigenous Peoples Festival for the city and for the other cities. I will support the things like fish ladders, mental health issues, school issues. We have school boards, we have VIHA, we have they collect taxes to take care of these. I don't think it's the place of the city of Colwood to be paying for them. We don't get to collect taxes on anything except property values, and I think this is the wrong place to be paying for these services. So I will be giving zeros to most of these for those reasons. Not because I don't think they're worthwhile causes, but because I think if the residents of Colwood want to donate to them, they have every opportunity to. I would love to see Colwood's website have pointers to all of these for the opportunity for residents to do that, but I will not support paying property tax revenue into charitable organizations. So on the Anawim, I'm putting a 0.
Any other? I'm not seeing support. Cynthia?
I'm a little more charitable than Councillor Nault. However, I do feel that our obligation here is to create quality of life, specifically within our community. And although I'm sure that Anawim is a valuable resource to the greater community, I'm not feeling that that's something that's appropriate for our tax dollars to be going towards.
Okay, I'm not seeing a lot of support to grant them funds tonight, so we'll mark them down as a 0 for now. Big Brothers and Big Sisters, their ask is $3,000, and their previous grants have been $2,000 in both 2016 and 17. Cynthia?
Thank you. I think that these programs are very worthwhile, especially that they're offering, they're working both ways. They're offering volunteer opportunities for residents of Colwood, and they're supporting residents of Colwood, which makes it a better place for all of us to live and possibly prevents lots of future costs. I have statistics from the school district in my bag just because I still have them in my bag. And one of the things that helps youth the most is having a relationship with another person. So the Big Brothers and Big Sisters fits right into that category of being very protective for youth. And since we're a very family-oriented community, so my recommendation is that we support them as we did last year, to continue the programs that we had last year to carry on this year. And I would also suggest to them that they consider making an application to the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice Committee, because they have programming that helps youth and families, and a small grant from there could help them to achieve their $3,000 ask that they've made of us, by having other areas to apply from besides just the city, which I certainly know that's something we like to see at the Family Court when we're looking at grant applications. We take our scarce resources, but we try to make sure that they're reaching out broadly and not just coming to one entity for support. So my suggestion is that we support them the same as last year for 2,000 and look for any increases to be found through other partners to come on board.
Thank you. Is there any objection to the 2,000? Jason?
And again, you have my comments hold, I'd still say a 0.
Okay, only seeing one person objecting, so we will put that down for $2,000. Next is the Creative United for the Planet Society. Their ask is $3,500 this year. Last year we granted them $1,000. Cynthia?
Again, I'm feeling for consistency. I think Creatively United for the Planet did do a good job of marketing Colwood and created an event in 2015 that was in Colwood. And engaged with our students and our local businesses. So I would recommend that we continue the same support of $1,000.
Okay, is there any objection to that? Seeing none, we'll put them down for $1,000. Next is the Crisis Intervention and Public Information Society of Greater Victoria. Last year's, we've granted them in previous years $1,000. This year is a $1,300 ask. Cynthia?
Great. I just wanted to speak to this one. I was just, one of the things that I'm aware of that's happened recently, and it was in partnership with the Saanich Peninsula Local Action Team and the South Island physicians, and I can never get their name quite right, but the doctors and physicians. There was a youth clinic that was opened recently, and the youth participate in creating a help card for youth, and one of the things that those youth particularly highlighted was the availability of the online counseling through Youth Space, which is something that Need 2 does. So I think that that's a very valuable service throughout the region that's available again to youth, and I believe that we're a very family-oriented community, and it's important for us to support our families. When we support the youth, we're supporting the entire family. So that I think is an important thing. So I was recommending the same as last year, $1,000.
Still on a zero. I really think this is a function of education, which is not the city's business. The city's business is maintaining the city for the city of Colwood. Councillor Day can be very charitable with other people's money, but I don't really feel like that's my job.
Thank you. Any other objections to including $1,000 as we did last year? Lilha?
Thank you. Not necessarily objecting, but I actually wanted to go for the full amount. And the reason is that, with youth these days, more and more of their lives are becoming online. And I think this online service is really, really beneficial because it's one of the few ways that youth feel safe in talking about their very, private problems. And the fact that, the information says that 339 Colwood residents has used this service and that the numbers continue to double, I think is really something we should have in mind. So they're only asking 300 more than last year. Thank you.
Okay, what's committee's wish then? We have 1,000 or we have 1,300? We can take it either or split it down the middle. Terry?
I would tend to agree with Bill Hall. I'd like to see it increased.
Rob?
Thank you. I would, before we started moving on with all these lines items, I'd actually be looking at probably a 5% lift on all the requests that we've done in the past, just because we do have to be realistic about inflation and everything else. And it basically, if we give the exact same amount of money as we give last year, we're basically not taking into account anything around inflation or any additional costs. So I was looking at actually a 5% lift on all of these or none of these. So either we're going to give what we gave last year, at least this from my standpoint, is we would give what we gave last year if we're going to do that, or if we're seriously about understanding that there are additional pressures and costs onto organizations, that we would look at it from that standpoint, that we would actually increase that by, I think a realistic number is around 5%. So I at this point, I would not be supportive of Lilha's motion just because we haven't done that with the other organizations.
Carol?
And similar for me, I'd rather get through the list in a manner that deals with them kind of in a consistency message, as Councillor Day has put out there, and then if there is room for improvement, because we have some new asks in our list as well, and we might need to, I'd rather be able to look to review and go back and maybe increase for those ones that we've not, done now, but, just
basis.
I'm seeing some nodding heads, so I think we'll put it down for $1,000, and then we can revisit it.
I just wanted to add that I think it's important. I think I am. I do tend to look at things generously. I would rather be a supporter. I've talked face to face with a lot of these service providers, especially for youth, and I recognize that stable year-over-year funding is incredibly hard to find. But getting new funders to come to the table, getting more partners to come to the table is another way to do that. So, I mean, I just don't want us to get to the point, maybe not this year, but next year where we say, well, who do we have to cut then? You know, if we're going to have a new program, who do we have to cut? So I would rather year over year continue to support for an amount, whatever that amount is, and not see somebody get chopped off the list later when our list finally gets too long, or find ways that we can achieve those efficiencies that isn't that doesn't lose some of the great work that's done. There's a lot of partnerships that have developed. Volunteer Victoria, for example, providing people feeding into the programs that need the volunteers to make them run. And we've seen quite a few presentations where they've talked about the number of volunteers in their organization are pretty extreme.
Thank you. So I put them down for 1,000. Dialogue and resolution services, they asked for 3,500 last year. Last 2 years, we gave them 2,000. So starting that from that base, I'm assuming based on that comment. Is there support? None from Jason. This is not so good to have it so close to past Christmas. Yeah. Is there any? What's the feeling with dialogue and resolution services? Do we include them again for 2,000?
I would like to see them included again. They do provide very valuable service in terms. They did come and make a full presentation to the Victoria Family Court Committee, and they do excellent work assisting the court.
Thank you. One maybe that Jason might support. HAT. We approved them for 2,500 last year, and the same ask for this year.
If I may, HAT is the one I really think we should move to being a line item. The city signed a conservation covenant with HAT on Havenwood Park. They're back there on a regular basis. We get many times that value out of their volunteers doing the invasive species removal. They've taught the Friends of Havenwood to do the same thing, and now they're out every Friday doing broom bashing and planting and maintenance work that saves the city a fortune. So I would be fully supportive of the 2,500, and I would like to make a motion that we move this into a line item from now on, as with the other repetitive charities.
Yeah, that would be a recommendation, right? Okay. Not seeing any objection. Okay. And so staff have made that notation as a recommendation. So we'll include them for $2,500. Makoa Housing, this is their first time asking for a grant of $2,500. Is there, Cynthia?
So there's a couple of things that made this one a little harder for me to support. One, it's a one-day event. And two, I think there's other funding sources that could be found. So my suggestion was that CAW would support it for a lesser amount, maybe $1,000, and look to helping them to find other granting opportunities. And my reason is simply that it's a one-day event. I think it's a very worthwhile event, but I think there's other ways to get partners on board.
Jason?
I would support that. I attended the event this summer. It was very well attended. It was a lot of fun. But I agree, 1,000, that's rather a big ask. I think we're only giving Canada Day 2,000, and there's over 2,000 people at that event every year. So I think a $1,000 grant for this year and see how it works.
Any objection to that? Seeing none, then we'll put them down for 1,000. If you're keeping score, we're up to $9,500. Open Gate Church, their ask is for $3,000 this year. It's their first time asking. We haven't granted them in the past. Not see.
I'm actually really supportive of this one. I think this is it's a hidden problem that we have in Colwood because it's not a visual, but it's definitely something that exists. We're constantly batting affordability, and this is one of the stressors that we have on affordability, that people can't even afford food to provide, and a program that provides fresh produce is exactly something we would do. I think it's something that we need to monitor and make sure that it's succeeding, but I would be very supportive of it moving forward.
Do you have a specific amount, Rob, or 3,000?
Yeah.
Any objection? Carol?
While I agree, but this is a first-time ask and a first time in the system, I'm just wondering if we shouldn't take a little bit more of a reserve role on that to have the opportunity to check into it and have them provide us with a bit more background information. This is sort of their first and beginning start.
What's the feeling of committee? Have you got an amount, Carol, that you had in mind?
I would support Carol in starting off just a little easy till we see how it goes. There may be other opportunities to hook them up as well. I was contacted in my role at Family Court with someone who had fresh groceries looking for a connection to distribute them. So there may be opportunities for us to do things that aren't necessarily putting the money into the big budget, and it might be more of making connections.
What's the feeling of the rest of committee? We want to start at 1,500 and see where we're at the end? Or what's, yeah? Jason, you had a...
I would support 3,000, actually. It's if you ever looked at the price of fresh vegetables, it's insane, and there are a lot of people going without, I'm sure. And this is a first-time ask, but I suspect it will be going up as the years go by, unless the economy turns around for the lower-income people in our society. So I would support 3,000.
So the majority is about 1,500 at the moment. So unless there's any objections, we can revisit it depending on where we're at. So yeah.
What part of that don't you understand?
So the majority is leaning towards the 1,500 at the moment. So we'll put them down for 1,500. And now it's your turn, Rob.
You can run this show, baby.
Peninsula Stream Society. Their ask is for $16,000. Rob, you had a question.
I do not. You
I
seem
don't
like you
believe it.
Talk to the staff about it.
No.
All right, I will ask it. So, staff, could you, through the chair, can you please comment on are there any other avenues, since this is a matching grant through provincial and federal or provincial funding? I'm sorry? Federal. Is there any other opportunities outside of the grant that we could assist this?
Through the chair, ultimately it would end up being tax funded. What I could possibly do is, the way that we're preparing the budget this year is we intend on presenting operating budgets as if nothing had changed in terms of service levels, and then special projects and increases to service. So this could be presented as an option for council consideration in the normal operating budget, in addition to essentially a new service, and along with financial impacts of that. So it could be included in the Parks and Rec budget for consideration.
Rob? Sorry, I guess I should have been more specific. I was thinking, does this qualify for gas tax?
Through the chair, well, if it were our asset, it would qualify for gas tax. Unfortunately, because I imagine it would be owned and maintained by the society or by Langford, then we can't apply our gas tax funds to it.
Thank you. Cynthia.
Thanks. I have to say, this is one that I'm very torn by. But my biggest problem is that it's located in Langford's road infrastructure. That's a full stop for me right there for funding it, because as important as I think it is for fish to spawn and travel up our rivers, I think Langford needs to come to the table, or CRD Parks needs to come to the table. I just, collect volunteers, come up with goodies, show up to do things in our community. Those are all things that I've done, and I really want to continue to do and to promote. If the Green Team could help, I'd recommend to get them out there. But when it comes to us paying for this, that's difficult given the limited impact. Even though I know that spawning fish has a huge impact on the well-being of our forests as well as our streams.
Thank you. Jason?
I would have to echo those sentiments. It's a Langford culvert. It's a CRD park. CRD is not coming to the board. Colwood's put money into CRD park acquisition for 15 years now and not got a penny of that back. And on top of that, the amount is so huge. It would almost double our grant and aid program for this year. So I think a zero is appropriate.
Carol?
The other one, and I was just trying to locate it. I thought that I'd seen somewhere that CRD was looking at a survey to determine whether or not the quite large parks acquisition fund was able to be used, some of those monies be able to be used for maintenance and for different things within the parks. And so if it's just talk out there right now, and I'm not sure if the surveys actually hit the market, but it might be another avenue for the folks in regards to this project investigate and take a look at, because if it does go that way, it might fit and fall in, and looky, there's money.
So I'm not seeing any support at this time for the grant, so we'll put them down as a zero. Next one is the Royal Canadian Legion, and this one is in regards to the Christmas dinner that we previously supported with a late request last year, and their ask is $2,500 this year. So we want to maintain that amount.
I had a question on the budget for that. I believe they said the budget for this was about $8,000, and they served 250 people. That's $32 a dinner. You can get a mighty good restaurant dinner for $32 a head. So I'm just curious. I find the ask is a little bit too high. I would maybe support 1,000.
I think part of that amount included a gift as well, and a goodie bag with food as well. So not just the dinner. Yeah.
$1,000.
Cynthia?
Yeah, I found it difficult. I mean, it came in late. We happened to have a little bit of money left in our grant budget, so we supported it in the spirit of Christmas. But I tried to, support the Legion, give bang for our buck to do the memorial event, and that's a big thing that we do in supporting that. So I really think that the Christmas dinner needs to find some other funding source rather than just coming to municipalities. So I would concur with Jason. I think we should support them to $1,000 level and then ask them to look for other partners to come on board. And it sounds like they had lots of good partners too, so.
Is there any objection from the rest of the committee for $1,000? No, seeing none, we'll put them down for 1,000. Mid-Vancouver Island Zone Veterans Society Cockrell House. It's an $8,000 ask to fund their sewer connection. Cynthia.
So this one tweaked my memory banks, and I did look up Cockrell House, and it was back in 2012 that we did provide a grant of $50,000 to Cockrell House by way of a check, and that's where we incidentally learned not to say up to $50,000 in our motions. So it took us a while to straighten that out. I understand since that happened that the property has actually changed ownership and is now owned by the Legion. And so, that was 5 years ago now. But I also feel somewhat, I love that Cockrell House is here and that they have this great program. But I'm also somewhat concerned because in the financials, it shows the lease for the building at $6,000 per month, which is pretty significant. I feel that if they're, leasing the building and they own the building, then they probably have the wherewithal to finance the needed upgrades for the sewer connection, which is the amount that they're asking for. The $8,000 that they're asking for is for sewer connections. So, in my opinion, I don't think this, for me, this doesn't qualify.
Thank you. Carol?
I had wished that the president had been able to stay by to perhaps answer. And I'm not speaking on behalf of the Legion, but my understanding is that Legion Command, BC Command, owns the property, and then the nonprofit housing, or Veterans Housing, which is a separate entity from the Legion. They may be Legion members, but it's not the Legion, is the nonprofit that is managing the complex. So if that's any sort of clarity in the scheme of things, it isn't the same entity, and they're not here to answer the question, so kind of just a little bit out there, but.
Okay. Thank you. You had a follow-up?
My question would be to staff, but Chris might not be the right person to answer. Is there any mechanism within what in doing sewer hookup to sort of spread the costs out for this entity? If there's a program or add it to their taxes incrementally over the next whatever in there, do we have something that could be offered up? Because I understand I think it's $16,000 for the hookup, but they're asking for basically 50%.
Chris?
Through the chair, administratively we could accomplish that. We could delay the billing or spread it over a longer period of time. I didn't see any opportunity for any exemptions of part or of the fee. So the grant and aid process is the right mechanism for requesting support that way.
Rob?
Thank you. Through the chair, I just need to clarify what the mayor has said, because me reading this, it sounds as though this would go to private funders. Like this is the portion of the cost that's going to be on the private side, because they're talking about decommissioning the 2 septic tanks as well. So this is not us bringing sewers to the road. This is from the road to the building, and so I don't think there's any mechanism that we could do that through taxes to help them offset that cost or anything along those lines, correct?
Through the chair, we are legislatively able to, but to provide a grant to the organization that can then return the money to us to connect. Yeah.
Jason?
I have a problem supporting that at all. We make all of our residents pay for their hookup. We make our residents pay for the sewers up their streets. Cockrell House does some wonderful work, but by giving them a sewer house hookup, you're probably doubling the value of the property as well, because it can be redeveloped. So I would say a 0 on this one.
I'm not seeing any objection to that 0, Rob.
I am.
Except for Rob.
Yeah, sorry, and I'll explain why really quickly. Again, you know, I guess I'm coming from the lens of as we work through our OCP, and you know, we're constantly messaging about affordability and trying to find avenues for people to stay within our communities that gives them those who are financially less fortunate. This is mostly run through the Legions and through the funding through the Legions. They're not getting any federal or provincial funding. And I think it is a responsibility of our community as leaders to sort of help this type of individual to stay in our community. So I'm actually supportive of us putting something. I don't necessarily need the whole 8, but I would suggest that perhaps 4.
It's a tough balancing act, because where's the line, right? It's like, do we provide the same type of grant to other affordable housing organizations for hooking up sewers, or to churches, to other organizations that do good work? So how do we pick who's going to get a grant to hook up the sewers? I think we've been pretty consistent in charging, I think, but your point's well taken. So I think I'm the only one objecting. I think so. But I hear that there's an appetite to possibly spread some of the pain over a period of time, which I think would help them if that's something that we can accommodate. So for now, I'll put that at 0. Stigma-Free Society, formerly the Bipolar Disorder Society, they're asking for $2,500. Previously, last year was $1,250. Is there an appetite, any objection to granting them that same amount, Jason or Cynthia? Sorry.
I was just going to speak in favor of the same as last year. I do know that the work that they've been doing has been leading to a lot of good circulation in the community, talking about mental health and people getting connected with resources.
Any objection to just the usual? Okay, so we'll put them down for $1,250. $1,250. Yeah. So our total is up to $13,500, if I'm correct. Next is the Vancouver Island South Film and Media Commission. Their ask was $3,000. The previous couple of years, we've contributed $1,000. Any objection to that same amount? Jace?
As always, they're talking $3 billion industry in British Columbia for the film industry, and they're asking us for money? Sorry. Royal Roads has profited greatly from having movies shot on their campus. Colwood hasn't seen a nickel of it. We might have a few restaurant meals sold, but that seems to me about the extent of the benefit to the city of Colwood. So I'm still on a 0 on that one, as I have been every other year.
Cynthia?
I'm comfortable with supporting them the same as we have last year, because I do believe that they do bring an economic development lens to providing more circulation and more things happening. And it's important that all industries get some support, and they do provide like a Chamber of Commerce function for the film industry, which I think is important.
Any other comments? Is there a desire to keep the same funding amount as last year or not? I'm seeing yeses. Okay, so we'll put them down for 1,000. Victoria Compost and Conservation Education Society, we haven't given them a grant previously. They are asking for 3,000 this year. Cynthia?
I'd like to suggest that we support them with a $1,000 grant, which I believe is the same as a couple of years before. They dropped off the list last year. They weren't here to present or talk about what they were doing, reading through their materials. They did offer soil testing and support for people who are wanting to do backyard gardening, which is one of the ways that we can help in our community. A lot of backyard gardening supports families who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford those fresh vegetables and things. And even if that family doesn't use them, there is a lot of programs that are aimed at circulating the produce that they may have through the food banks and possibly through programs such as the Living Edge that we were talking about.
Any objection to the $1,000? Oh, question, Rob?
Through you to staff again, do we have any budget ideas around our community garden and what we're contributing to our own community garden this year?
Chris?
Because I'm just wondering why we're investing in that and not investing in our own.
Through the chair, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that at this time. That's okay.
My apologies.
That's a good question, actually. That's a very good question. I'm not sure where we're at with that. Okay, Cynthia?
I just have a tiny bit of an update on our own community garden in that, and her name is in that magic place where all names go when you want to find it. Lauren, I ran into her through a community connection and asked her about the community garden. And she has, in fact, she's 25, young and busy with school and work, but she is still advocating for the community garden, and in fact has met with students at Royal Bay High School to get them interested in being involved in the garden. And I believe that the Compost Education Center is one of the resources that she relies on to get the knowledge that she needs to work on our community gardens. So they have still got the money that we gave them as a grant, and they have a quote for fencing because that's the basic requirement in order to get started, was to be able to fence it so that it wasn't overrun with deer or other things. So just a tiny bit of an update.
So we do have a recommendation of $1,000. Is there any objection to that? I'm not seeing any, so we'll put them down for 1,000. Next is the West Shore Arts Council, and we did have some discussion about this line item. Basically, it's a bit of a bump from last year, probably inflationary. Cynthia?
So I'd like to support them for the additional $500, and my reasoning is that they did report out in their documentation that they had a funding shortfall and weren't able to support all the things that they would like to have supported in Colwood, and that's the reason for their asking for more money.
Rob?
Thanks. I'm not supportive, and the only reason I'm not supportive is because they're getting $5,000 right now, and we've looked at everybody else, and we haven't done a lift on anybody else yet. So, I definitely would consider it if we were going to be lifting everybody else as well. But I would be comfortable at zero, and that's really not a true reflection of how much we're giving them, because we're actually giving them $5,000. So.
I'm fine with considering it. Well, if we consider a lift for everybody else, okay. I can go with.
So we'll put them down for 0 now, and then we'll revisit that. Wounded Warriors, first time they've asked for a grant, and their request is $1,000. Cynthia?
I'd like to support them for $500, and my reasoning is, even though this event has been going on for a while, it does cover a huge number of communities. I think every community that it covers should be supporting them. I think it is important. We all have paramedics and police and military service personnel who suffer from PTSD of various types, and this is a great opportunity for us all to come together. And I want to support them, but I also want to encourage others to support them. So hence my slightly less than they're asking for.
Okay. Any objections to the 500? I'm not seeing any, so we'll put them down for 500. And then Youth for Christ Victoria, last year we granted them $1,000. This year they're asking for $2,000. We interested in supporting them for the same amount as last year? Okay. I'm not seeing any objections, so that would be $1,000. So we're at, and that's our final amount, which is $17,000, I think, if I'm correct. Keeping.
To Chair, I got 16,750.
Oh, 17. Oh, there you go. I was never good at math, so that's 16,750. Perfect. That'll teach me. God. Did you already calculate what, how much more room we have?
Yes, that's $11,300 less than last year's budget. So there's an additional $11,300 if you want to maintain the same funding level.
And in previous years, we've generally held about $2,500 back in case we have a request, an emergent request throughout the year. Is council okay to continue that practice? Is that an objection? Okay. So we'll shave $2,500 off of that $11,300, Chris, as a reserve. So that gives us $8,800 to play with. So, which is actually pretty good. So I commend the committee for the work. Carol?
Just to go back and address Councillor Martin's comment earlier about supporting those that had indicated a lift for reasons of increased costs and that sort of thing. If we have that margin in there, is this the appropriate time to visit that on all the previous 2017 applicants to support them? Because each and every one of them asked, I believe, for an increased amount.
Yep, I believe so. So what's committee's pleasure?
Well, just looking at the numbers, we have $8,800 left to play with, and we have $16,750 in grants. If we gave everybody a 10% lift over what we've said so far, that would use up our $8,800, more or less. Of the old, of the amount that we've talked about. So the $16,750 that we've written down as the number that we're working from, which for the most part is the same as what they got last year. If we gave them a 10% increase, so 10% of 16,750, right, would be less than our $8,800 that we have left.
It would be 1,600.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my math is really terrible tonight. I need help.
God, I'm glad it's not me.
Yes. So I was thinking of trying to add something meaningful to each one, and looking for a percentage that would be within our budget.
Well, a round number, just looking at the amounts here, I mean, yeah, no, this is what we get, so. No, they're the same as last year. It's all the same. Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, I see, as last year, right. Yeah, Rob, sorry.
Normally, I would not concur with Cynthia just from a standpoint of thinking, we have to look more than just 1 year. And, that 10% lift that we're going to give them this year, that's going to look on next year's council that 10% is going to be automatically built in, and then you're adding more. So the lifts grow, and then we run into that same issue that you were talking about, that, are we going to get into issues around having to minus people off because we can't afford it anymore? I would actually, but because we did so well this year, I would be comfortable with the 10%, and then the surplus, that we keep the surplus. And, that's going to give us $8,000 to $10,000 to play around with. So I think an easy 10% lift on all the numbers that we've just talked about, except for HAT. And the reason is because we gave them their full amount. I don't think we should be giving them more money than what they've asked for.
So just to clarify, Rob, you're talking about those that we kept at the 2017?
Yes, I'm talking about
new ones.
Correct. I'm talking about I'm talking about everybody that we approved. That we just give everybody a 10% lift on what we recommended. And then, so for example, even Wooden Warriors that asked for 1,000 and we suggested 500, I would suggest that we actually change that to 550 as well. So we just give them a 10% lift on that whole list that we've gone through. And it's still only $1,600. So it's not a huge, significant.
Okay.
But, excuse me, just to finish, but I do want to clarify that I do not believe that we should be giving HAT more than their request. So they asked for $2,500. I would not feel comfortable giving them $2,500 plus an extra 10%. I would just give them the $2,500.
What about the West Shore Arts Council? They received nothing, but they asked for 500, and we were holding off. Just a 10% to them as well?
No, excuse me.
Yeah, they're in core.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
can I just speak to that briefly? Because I'm looking at that and thinking that, I don't think that's significant enough in some ways, the 10% for the smaller people. So I agree, we shouldn't give more than what they asked for. So HAT, I take your point on HAT, so exclude them. But let's make it a meaningful increase. So for the Wounded Warriors, instead of doing 500, let's give them $600. And where we have $1,000 grant that's say for Creatively United for the Planet, let's bump them up to $1,200. You know what I'm saying? I think a 20% would stay, because we're not including HAT, and that would stay well within our budget and would be a number that's more measurable to each of the recipients. And it still keeps us well within our budget.
Committee?
Well, here, I'll speak to it one final time. I guess my concern to that, as I said, is not about this year, it's about next year. And the years to follow, that if we start giving 20, 30, 40% lifts to some of these numbers, then that's something that future council is going to have to deal with. So for myself, I feel comfortable more just keeping it at 10.
Okay. So I'm not seeing any objection to the 10%. That seems to be the majority. So
all right.
So the 10% excluding HAT. Chris, I think you've got that. Okay.
Yep.
Did you require a motion to that effect, Chris, based on the numbers we provided plus 10%?
think a motion is a good idea for clarity in the minutes. If I may, I'll just run through my numbers as I understand them and maybe correct me if I'm wrong. So my recommendation to council would be $2,200 for Big Brothers and Big Sisters, $1,100 for Creatively United for the Planet, $1,100 for the Crisis Intervention and Public Information Society, or NEED 2, $2,200 for Dialogue Resolution Services. No, we're skipping HAT, so I don't have to do that one. Macola would be $1,100. Open Gate was at 15, so help me, is that 1650? And the Legion, 1,100. And Stigma-Free Society, I need help again. It's 1,250 plus 10% is 1,375. There we go. Vancouver Island Film, 1,100. Compost and Conservation Education, 1,100. West Shore Arts Council is at what? It's a lift of 10% on the 5,000, so is it 500? Correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then Wounded Warriors is 550, and Youth for Christ is 1,100. And that would be our recommendation.
So we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? Seeing none. Chris, we're good? Yeah. Yes, to budget, yes. Yeah, thank you for that. Chris, you're clear on the numbers?
Yes, I just have one other comment to request a direction from council on the item discussed about referring HAT to the line item in the budget, if that's the will of the committee here or not.
So recommend to council that HAT be considered as a line item.
Okay, so we'll pass that first motion first, and then we'll pass a motion to include HAT in the core budget. Okay. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, motion, looking for a mover to include the $2,500 HAT.
Committee recommend to council that HAT be recommended to move to a line item on the budget.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. All right. Next item is final public participation. So,
stand up.
I know. We wait.
Stand
Yeah.
up here and tell us how well we did.
Yeah. This is your opportunity before we call it a night. If you had any further questions, but Judith.
Judith Collington, and just for clarification, I am working with Peninsula Streams, so you know where my bias is coming from on this. I just wanted to share with you that since there is a little extra wiggle room in your grants budget, wondering whether you might consider a considerably smaller grant of $2,500 or $5,000. One of the things that we're doing is we are trying to get involvement, clear involvement from all of the municipalities for this particular project. We're also doing a lot of fundraising out in the community, going out to the businesses, and it's good to kind of show clear support from all of the municipalities in the region. We have a little program here. We're going after businesses. We're saying buy a step, you get a certain amount of recognition. We've got various recognition levels. $5,000 is the kind of the magic number to kind of really have your logo on everything. But of course, we're recognizing all of the people who support this program. So I just wanted to throw out to you, there is an opportunity to support this project. We don't have a lot of fish-bearing streams in Colwood. Millstream Creek is something that goes significantly through Colwood, and it does benefit the fish, the fishermen, and it's something that kind of goes right throughout the West Shore community. So I think it's a really nice piece. Absolutely, yes, Langford needs to be up at the plate. They have already stacked up. They gave $10,000 last year, and you better believe we're going after them for a considerable amount more this year as well. All of the money that we get through Fisheries and Oceans Canada, which is around $250,000, we have to match with other funds in order to be able to access their funding. So that fundraising is really important. And we're hoping to have the funding in place, ideally by the beginning of April. So if you would be willing to consider it, I would be delighted. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone further before we wrap up? Seeing none, the next meeting then is scheduled for Monday, February the 5th. Same place, same time, 6 o'clock. And I'll just have a motion for adjournment. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.